All right, welcome to the Iterative Approach podcast. Suck it, Wayne. Where we talk about. He keeps giving me shit about it. I always mess up my intro. All right, welcome to the Iterative Approach podcast, where we talk about everything Agile. According to Harvard Business School, and I need my notes for this one, the social, economical, and political factors driving change across industries have not only impacted global markets, but workplace dynamics as well. In tonight's podcast, we will be looking into the change from the classic business model, where employees typically work in the same office, shifted to global teams consisting of employees who work remotely across different countries and time zones. I'm joined in tonight's session by Preez, a senior developer and team lead for one such team. Preez, introduce yourself.
Thanks, Herman, and thanks for having me here tonight. My name is Preez, you know that, the rest don't. I'm originally from Bloemfontein, where I finished my IT industry and studies, but
okay,
I've been staying in...
won't hold that against you?
In Pretoria East for the last 20 years. I've also started my career about 20 years ago, so I've been in the IT space for more than 20 years.
Sure.
I come from a background, I used to work for two other companies called eLogix and RTT. I used to be very much focused in the logistics industry, where we focused on more like order allocation and route optimization software. And after that, I joined EOH, where I was more into the financial sector for a while. And then I've joined Agile Bridge, a software development house here in Pretoria East. I've been here just over 3 years now.
Sure.
And I had the privilege of working with a very big international client that spreads markets from the east to the west.
Sure.
And covering a lot of different individuals coming from different cultures, working in different time zones. And I think that is what our podcast will be about tonight, is how do we manage these distributed remote teams with different cultures.
Cool. Thanks, Preez. Really appreciate that. And a nice little pat on the back for yourself of how old you are, eh? It's okay. It's okay. You still look good, though. You still look good. So global teams often consist of employees who work remotely across different countries and time zones to maintain clear line of communication and make contributors outside of the office feel valued. It's critical to hold regular meetings with them and to have an open channel of communication. Right? So that's kind of Harvard's, this is how it should be. Right? So my question to you tonight, Preez, is what is involved in managing communications with teams as part of a global delivery-based ecosystem? What's your go-to? What do you do to manage communication and have it be effective and actually get a result out of it, or because of it? I know in some instances, developers call it meeting or death by meetings, right? Because I don't know, it almost feels like management doesn't have their fingers on the pulse the whole time, so they need to check in constantly. I don't know if that's the case in the current project, but take us through what it takes to manage communication.
Well, in this globally delivered-based ecosystem of us, there's a couple of things we can do to manage communications, because we are diverse, we spread all over the world, and we basically work remotely from home these days. So one of the first things is to define your communication channels first of all. Channels like SMS or email or Teams and those things, and go and set the protocols for those things. For example, if you have a production down thing, you might communicate on a direct message system.
Yeah.
When you try and set up a meeting, you'll use email. And for other tools, you'll use a team. So there's different tools you'll use for different circumstances. So it's very important that you define your communication channels. Okay. And go and specify the protocols of when do you use which one of those channels.
So just a quick question from my side. Is that agreed upon by the team itself, or is it kind of forced, or does it come out of like history, like prior, let's say for instance a P1 or something serious happens, and it happens a couple of times, and then management finds out, ooh, I get a better result if I just phone the guy? Or is it predefined in, like, let's say a planning session or PI or something like that? How did you guys get to that defined list of channels and when to use it?
I think it's very important that you predefine these things.
Okay.
All right. Because some communication channels is very delayed, like your email.
Yeah.
And then obviously your direct messaging is for immediate response.
Yeah.
So it depends on the situation. I mean, if you just communicate something or asking a question, you might send the email or something on Teams. But when you have like a P1 or a production down system, you obviously want to get to the guy, get the result immediately.
Yeah.
In that case, you'll use a direct communication.
Okay.
Now, that direct communication is not everybody phoning everybody. It's normally when you get to that point, it will be something that gets escalated. So on the client side, it will be escalated, and that person will communicate with you.
So it kind of falls within the company's way of working or escalations, right? So have you ever found that this kind of defined channels bridges protocol or procedures? Like for instance, let's say your client in China sends you a message, but usually it's through emails or something, and he feels comfortable enough to reach out through WhatsApp or a message. Is that handled or managed, or do you just allow communication to come through regardless of the severity?
No, I think if you get in a situation where somebody contacts you with a direct communication, and that has happened in the past, it's very clear that we need to almost communicate and be open and honest with each other about that. So if a client uses something like that to get to a quick response, it's your responsibility to reiterate over those protocols and rules and set them out, and to make it clear that when do we use which protocols, because it's very easy to start abusing them.
Okay.
And if we don't control that or set the standards and the protocols in place, those rules are for everyone. And we need to keep them.
And it's also like communication gets lost, right? So 2 months down the line, the big boss goes, no, but I sent Jake a message about this. It's like something big, and you send a message, you're expecting results out of it. Okay, so clear communication, defined path, and manage expectation, and get everyone on the same page. Kind of is basically how you handle that. All right. So with that said, to effectively communicate and collaborate with team members across the globe, teams take advantage of the variety of tools and technologies that are at their disposal. What
Are you jumping to question 2 now?
Yeah.
There's still a lot of points in question 1 that I can maybe just tell you. So a couple of the things that we need to put in place for this global delivery system and communication. So one is establishing the clear communication channels. That is how we communicate. The next one is the collaboration tools. I mean, if we do project management, we need to put those things in place. We need to put shared calendars in place. We need to put shared wikis in place so that the people that form parts of this can collaborate. All right?
Why is a calendar so important, do you think?
Availability. Because you might have someone that is having a specific issue on a Thursday morning, because we're working globally. So you might have a public holiday on a Thursday, I might have one on a Friday.
About that.
So there's a bit of diversity. We must remember the diversity. And it happens a lot that a team in Germany might pitch up in the morning, they reach out to the guys in South Africa, and everybody's missing.
Yeah.
But it will be nice if everybody knows there was a public holiday and leaving those things. So it's creating a lot of transparency of who is where and available. And available those things.
Transparency, I like that. Yeah.
A second thing for this, for communication, is also cultural awareness. We need to be very aware of the differences between different cultures, because the way that me and you can communicate, it's not the same than people communicate in different cultures. Okay. So although it might work for me and you, it might not work in a different culture. So therefore, it's very, very, very important to consider and recognize these members and understand these communication differences.
How do you manage that, or how do you teach that? I'm thinking to myself now, would there be such a big difference to maybe a German client or Australian client? How do you pick that up, and how do you manage that, and how do you actually like get everyone on the same page? How do you guys do that? Or is it just through like morning stand-ups and kind of getting to know the person?
We've got a couple of tools in place.
Oh.
But you won't know until you've spent some time with a specific culture or a team. Okay. It's also very difficult to say that a specific culture always operates in that, because even here in South Africa, from one team to a different team, there might be difference.
Yeah.
So that's why communication is so important, so that you can actually sit with those people and you can communicate. Because if you set up a new team, these is like all things that you need to put in place. And you don't always bring your own rules from your own place and say, this is what we're going to have to follow. You have to consider and speak to your guys in Japan, for example, on how do they do things. Speak to your guys in Germany, speak to your guys in the Netherlands, and find out and communicate. Ask the questions, how do you do these things, how do you do these things, and then see if you can find a common ground and set that as a basis for the communication.
Who's the driver of that? Would that be like team leads' responsibility, or even the developers as an individual? Or how do you make your team aware of, being sensitive to other cultures and ways of working?
Well, responsibility, I would say, is to the team lead and the product owners, because they sit like in the center of this.
Okay.
And you will normally have a representative of each area that you can communicate with to get that information.
So the person is there if you reach out to them, say, I'm not 100% sure about this. What do you, do we engage or do we not engage? How do we go about this? Okay.
And then another thing for this global distribution is definitely your time zone management. So you might have a team that's working your time zone 2 a.m. till 11 a.m. in the morning. You might have another team that's working at 6 a.m. and those things. So you even have to take those things into consideration and try and share the communication, that you have a handover meeting or you sit with those people, because you can't have your east side working on their own in your center. So you need to manage that time zone difference as well. So you don't have to just communicate with each other using the channels. You also need to consider that I cannot send an email or direct message to someone in Japan asking a question like 10 o'clock at night. It's out of place. So you need to consider those things as well. I think a couple of other things to collaborate this communication is definitely team building activities.
Even remotely.
Even remotely, you have to build trust between people.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing that makes a remote team work, it all comes down to communication. You need to keep people involved. You need to keep them activities. You need to get them in a plan that they can trust each other. And we have to make sure that there's regular communication. Like you mentioned earlier, death by meeting. That's not what we're trying to do here, but the frequency and ongoing on a daily basis to communicate with all these members, because we work with the Agile approach. Things can change very quickly. So as soon as something changes, you need to let everybody know. Yeah. So everybody needs to know at any point exactly what's going on. Yeah. And that's why the communication is so very important. And then the last thing for communications is documentation. You need to make sure that every person's got access to the information they need to do their job.
That's a developer's like Achilles heel. Documentation.
Yeah, if you say that word, like 5 people disappear. That's true.
Yeah, somebody says, oh man,
but it's a very big enablement. Yeah. We have issues where people get asked questions and time gets lost because the person on the other side of the line could have maybe solved the problem if he just had access to the information. Okay. So now it takes 2 or 3 people to solve a problem where it could only have been 1. Okay.
So just one question that popped into my head now is, like you said, the time of loss, right? So with a time zone spanning probably from east to west at the current project you're on, Is there a delay in action or reaction through managing a team this size? So let's say, for instance, you ask the product owner a question. Is it a immediate response, or do you have at the back of your mind, oh, it's 7 hours, he'll get to it eventually?
It can be a difficult situation. So there has been issues where if you need to solve or communicate with someone on the other side and the channels and everything is in place, it works. But you need to be very careful because you might have, and international projects got a lot of communication protocols in place. Yeah. You cannot just any person phone like any person.
Okay.
There's Germany's got they call it FAK, which is a very specific laws and those things that actually governs that who can communicate with who, and that normally creates like a bit of a problem because now you're playing this telephone-key type of game where you need to communicate with this guy, that guy needs to communicate with that, and in a situation like that, if someone is missing in that middle piece, it like blocks the communication.
Correct.
So I ask you something, you need to ask the next guy, but you're not here today, and I have to wait for you. So it can get very much delayed, but that's why we have the collaboration tools. So we don't only have the communication channels that we communicate directly, but we have project management tools like Jira and those things. So you can always keep those things up to date, craft your task in those things. So it's not necessary for me to communicate with you directly if I need something, but using those tools enable everybody to collaborate on those things in real time. And I think that's where the performance and the deliverable comes in.
Yeah. So with that said, right, so to effectively communicate and collaborate with team members across the globe, teams take advantage of a variety of tools and technologies at their disposal. So kind of a segue to that last little statement that you made now is, what methodology, processes, or technology do you use to assist project execution as a global team? How do you get stuff done, and what tools do you guys use to get stuff done?
Okay. So we like the Agile methodology. I mean, we like Agile Preez. And the reason for that is it focuses very much on adaptability, communications, and the iterative development cycle. So we use that. And also it supports big international teams because the whole communication and feedback loop is like built into that. So we use that as a thing. Processes like DevOps, to make sure that you implement those things, to automate the processes where you can, where you don't need involvement. That also helps a lot with a lot of things that you don't have to have hands on.
So excuse my
with a lot of things
ignorance here, but would that be like a coding standard or a development standard that you guys have in place for the project itself? So as a standard, when you do a PR, this is the channel, or this is how it flows, or do you have a certain swim lane that you guys follow? Like I think you mentioned the Jira board as well. Is there a certain swim lane that you follow specifically for a project or for the teams itself?
Yes, I mean, as you look at the development cycle as we go through, there's a lot of processes like planning or discussing or developing that's hands-on, where we need to communicate.
Okay.
But there's also a lot of processes in this pipeline where we don't have to communicate. I mean, deployment, for example, and testing and those things, you can automate, which means you can actually take out the need for me and you to communicate all over the place because that's already in place.
Okay.
So by automating that, you minimizing the required amount of communication needed there because those processes are in place.
Any risk if one of those processes fail? Obviously it'll pop up and you'll get it in the code or there's issues. But is there a fundamental flaw in using these automated processes where a user would be better suited, or is it better suited to automate it, get it through the line and get it sorted?
When we look at the DevOps, I think the CI/CD pipelines is there for a specific reason. It implements standards.
Okay.
It makes sure that we can do those automated tests to prevent things that's going into production and that. And the human involvement in that is minimized.
Okay.
All right. yes, you do have issues when after the deployment just everything goes down. And if that is the case, then you need to start communicating, and that normally that happens quite
That's
often.
a phone call, right?
And that's the phone call, yeah, that's the phone call where someone says, hey, we just like deployed a like production thing, everything was tested, now what's wrong? And now you need to get the specialists online to get those things. But those things are minimal.
Yeah.
I mean, if you do your things right and you put everything in place, then it should be a 99.9 thing that's there. Another thing is the cloud-based collaboration tools. We work remotely.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we use things like Teams. We all know Teams. It enables us to do file management. It enables us to do project management. It enables us to communicate in a team environment live. We also have tools like Jira or whatever tool people use that enable us to share communication. You know,
For
track
us normal
tasks.
folk, it'll be DevOps.
And track the task. Virtual meeting tools, Teams, project management software, Jira. So it's very, very important that we not only have the communication channels open to communicate with each other, but that we have the right set of tools that enable us to do all these tasks, because these things are very specialized. You know, they are built for the Agile methodology. They are built for us communicating. They're built to centralize things. And it's very important, like whatever we do and whatever process we follow. I mean, there was the old way of people sending emails saying like, we need this task and this task and this task. And there's still teams that operates like that. But if you go back to that and you have to go, look, it's a mess, because how do you track that? How does the next guy get access to those emails? There I would say that's why tools like Jira and project management becomes very important, because we all can participate. The info is managed, it's centralized. From the one guy to the next guy, it's accessible. So that's like very, very important for us.
So one of the key challenges of overseeing a global team is figuring out how to encourage participation and promote discussion among employees with varying levels of language proficiency. So my question to you, Jakes, is how is balanced participation across teams managed? How do you get guys interested in talking the same language?
Well, I think we need to encourage open communication as much as we can, even where there is participants that is speaking a different language, so that we can create a very inclusive environment. It's like a very, very important thing. Using a common language. Use a language that is understood by everyone in the team.
Which is, in your case?
In this case,
English.
it will be English. Yes. For those members that struggle with English, it's very important that you provide some level of training. Because of the communication thing, it does not help if you put people in the room but they can't communicate with each other. A very important thing is use visual aids. So while you're in a meeting, while you're sitting, draw pictures. Draw a person a picture. And I think it's very much easier for people to understand pictures because it's multi-language and a conversation. So that's a very nice tool to use, the diagrams and charts and things like that.
Can't believe it's such a simple solution, but the impact, I'm literally just imagining it now. The impact is immense. That's brilliant.
And then pairing team members. What's important is if you work with someone in Japan and you have two members there, one only speaks Japanese and another speaks Japanese and English, pair them together, because you can communicate with the one and that one can share and work together. So pairing team members. And then establish some ground rules. So when you're in a conversation or with people that's having problem understanding the language, be clear and ask people, speak clearly and speak slowly so that everybody can understand. And never be afraid to stop someone. If someone is blabbering on about things, I think it's not rude, but you can politely ask someone, please speak a bit slower, speak a bit clearer to communicate those things.
And then would that then come from the person not understanding themselves, or people around that knows someone would be struggling or could be struggling? They will then speak up on behalf of that person.
I think it's both ways. I think a person struggling with English will both be struggling hearing, so that will be nice for everyone, even if I'm English, to speak slowly for that person. but also for other people that's struggling with the language, if they speak closely, it gives your mind time to try and translate what it is that they're trying to see.
Yeah.
But I will normally, if I'm in, as somebody who's like jabble on just about nonsense. So the ground rules must be, stay to the topic, stay clear, speak slowly. And if people wander off of those things, just bring them back.
And then how would you manage something that is, let's say for instance the language barrier is a real problem for either an individual or for a team. How do you go about managing that? How do you reach out? How do you get it fixed? Can you fix it? Like just off the top of your head, if like our fictitious Japanese team, if they're really struggling and the project might be in at risk, how do you manage that? How would you go about that?
Sure.
I'm literally
So I can take a real world example of what's actually happening now, and it's not with the Japan team, but it's we also have a Turkish team that's working with us. A lot of people from Bulgaria and Turkish following our QA team, and what we've done for that situation is that we have 2 or 3 people that we are communicating with, but the team has complained that it's very difficult for them to understand this person.
Okay.
So what we have requested is, also in a nice, polite way, is have asked them and their manager to enable them to do like a 2 or 3 or 4 week actual English class.
Okay.
Not only for the language, but how to communicate in a way that we can understand.
Okay.
Because if you look in this environment, if someone's speaking 2 different languages, they will not get along.
Yeah.
We cannot do any work. So you have to enable your person.
Mm.
If the central language is English, for you to participate, you should be able to speak language.
Okay.
You need to speak the English. If you have problem with the language,
Speak the English.
speak like English. It's important for you, just like as you spend time in your career making sure that I know how to code, how I need to do these things, and you put effort into that. It's also just as important to put effort in the language that you are using to communicate. I mean, it's your choice. You have chosen to either work in a local team. It's also your choice to be part of a global team. And to participate, I think you need to make sure that you have the tools in place to do that. If you need to go for an English course, you need to do that.
Yeah. I don't know, and this is something like really personal, but I previously worked for a company, and one of my developers was a African French speaking individual. So he had a real thick accent. And we worked together for 3 years, and it was the one day a new developer came in and he pulled me aside and was like, listen, I can't understand this guy. And I'm like, what do you mean? He like speaks fluent English. And he's like, no, it's like the accent, I can't understand it. And I actually got used to, I learned how to listen to the
and now
individual.
It sounds like normal
It
English.
sounded normal, and I had to like pull myself back and go, okay, wow, there is a language thing. But just something personal, but on a scale like this, I've not even imagined, because I take for granted that every time I type an email or I phone a client, English or the language is literally the last of my worries, if it is even a worry. So I don't know, it's blowing my mind that you are actually having to manage cultures and languages and accents and everything. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think the Western world, you'll find English being quite the language. But if you move to the Eastern side, English is not the spoken language.
Yeah.
Even in the Middle East, it's not the spoken language. People have to go out of their way. Even some of our German friends had to learn English in the last year. Some of them, which is now the PO, did not speak a word of English 2 years ago.
No way.
So they literally go through the process of enabling them to speak the language. And that, just as you said now, I was the other day with Gail in a meeting, sitting with a guy from, and he spoke. She could not understand a word.
Yeah.
I understand everything he's saying.
Right, you learned the accent.
It happened. So with the Japan team, we had so much problem like 3 years ago. If you spend a year with them, your brain actually works and it becomes clearer. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we've seen it happening all the time.
Yeah, I've been in a couple of meetings, when I was standing in for you while you were gallivanting the world. I was also in a situation where, I heard some thick accents, and thank goodness, our developer was there, and they were just...
I understand some.
Yeah, no. I'm like, what is happening?
Take some time, but you get there. Eventually.
And then that. So how do you manage the transition of a new person coming in, or do they just kind of feed off of your understanding as a specific team that feeds off of the understanding of what a person would be saying if they have like a thick accent or they're struggling with the language?
A solution for the thick accent thing is while you're working on Teams, you can talk there. But what is very easy, if you're saying something that's not understood, type it.
Oh, gotcha.
You can just type it in the text, because like we had with the conference the other day, the guy could not understand the accent, but as soon as you type it out,
he was just messing with me. Like,
is it?
100%.
No, but I mean that is a situation where you can have. So for accent, you can move in text into a live situation. But also for that, you have new team members. It's very important. Pair them up. Pair someone that understands them now. Give them some time, and they will learn.
That's literally one of the last things I've ever thought about worrying. There's deadlines and costs and risk and quality. It's crazy to think that language is like a real part of your day to day.
No, it definitely is. I must say, I think for us day to day, or for me day to day, it's not the tech stack. It's not the
people
software
stack.
writing. It's not the architecture. That's the easy part.
Wow.
The difficult part for us is the communication, the managing of people, and balancing this thing out so that everybody knows and understands exactly what is going on. So that's the challenging part for me.
Thank goodness we got smart people like you, because I would...
Thanks, Herman.
I'm so bad at this.
I'll take it.
All right. So at present, PwC study found that 34% of employees feel more productive now than before the pandemic, since they work from home. And the other half experience, or the other half of executives, 52% agree, that employees tend to have fewer distractions at home. No office chats and distractions, or no office chats or distractions distracting them for their tasks, or co-workers dropping by their desks, right? So, sorry, this is a PwC study, and anyway, I read it. Great. So my question is, we all knew stats are not always a true reflection. So how do you manage productivity, and do you see a increase in productivity because of, look, the stat says the pandemic, but for you guys it's day to day. You've been working like this before the pandemic hit and everything. So is the productivity there with a massive global team like this, and how do you manage the productivity on that side?
I think for most of us, luckily, working from home works. The productivity is up. It does not work for everyone.
Okay.
I think it's something that you need to discipline yourself in very much. So to measure these productivity is, and to make sure that people is capable of working from home, it's the first thing is like, you need to set very clear expectations.
Okay.
You need to have your person working from home understand exactly clear what it is that he needs to deliver, when does he need to deliver that, when is timelines, and what do you need from him. Because we don't manage people's time. They need to manage their own times and their own things from home.
That's
so
interesting stuff.
They need to know what they need to deliver and when to deliver it. So we are moving very much away from this micromanagement thing and beating on people.
Yeah.
So setting the expectations is a very, 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 very clear thing. That's very important. Make sure that you provide them with the right tools. A person that's working from home obviously needs a computer.
Cool.
He needs internet access.
Yeah.
He needs electricity. So you
Well.
need to make sure. We won't go into that point.
Disclaimer that South Africa, like based only.
All right. So
at
you
this
need to
stage.
enable them with the tools.
Yeah.
Then, if I can give something, you need to establish a routine at home. you need to set up your environment to mimic what you have at the office. You cannot sit today and work in the living room, and tomorrow you sit in the kitchen, you sit that, and today you work from 8 to 5, and tomorrow from 4 to 5. You need to put something in place, have the same schedule, put those things in place. All right? Encourage regular communication. You can't put a guy at a remote location and communicate with him once a month. It will not work.
Yo, imagine, hey?
We're in an agile environment. Things change. Sometimes it feels to me like on a second basis. And when that happens, you need to communicate that with the people. So I try and communicate with each one of my members at least once a day, even if it's just 1 minute.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, hey, you there, this, whatever's going on, here's an opportunity, give some feedback, give some that change, move on to the next one. Okay. All right? Again, use the project management tools. Use those collaboration tools, you know. Yeah. You have teams always open. So even though you sit at home, you're actually still sitting in the office.
Gotcha.
Because you've got the guys in front of you, you've got your communication channels on you, you've got your phone next to me. It's basically you can communicate with everybody live in that show. Yeah. And then offer flexibility to guys. You know, I don't want to tell a guy work from 8 to 5 because we all have lives, we all have kids, we have personal things. So
isn't 8 to 5 the standard?
No, I won't say that.
Okay.
We will try and keep it to a flexible time because obviously we're serving a client and we want to be available to work with them. But if you have a team of 10 or 20 members, you don't have to have all of them there. So there's some flexibility. Some people have support them in their issues, let them work a bit earlier because they have something else after in the afternoon, or maybe have them work a bit later. Workloads and those things. So there's a couple of things you can do to make sure that people are productive from home.
How do you pick up if there's an issue with an individual or with a team that's kind of not work related? You know, how do you pick that up? Because I've got an answer for you, but I want to hear your thoughts on it first.
For me, that is a personal relationship that I try with each and every person that works with me, because no one works for me. We work together. There's no I in team.
Gotcha.
So, and we're a very close family in our team. So when things go wrong, again, back to the communication. All right. If you see a team member struggling, raise it with your team lead. I mean, nobody can take action if you don't have the information. And I communicate with people. I communicate with them daily, and I ask them. You know, ask people, what's your space like? Are you okay? There's nothing wrong in that. Care for them. You know, care for your employees as much as you care for your clients, because they are a centerpiece. So it's the relationships, and to make sure that someone or employee is comfortable enough that he can come to you with issues and you can assist him.
So in our environment and Agile Bridge, I'm affectionately known as, you know, the horrible timesheet guy. But you won't believe the information I can get from someone's timesheets. How many times have I reached out to you going, yo, this guy's pulling apps, we need to check in. Or even if they do less hours, I'm like, hey, what's wrong with the project? It's never what's wrong with you. Why are you not performing?
So you're monitoring us.
Of course I am. The guys don't know what I know.
No, definitely.
But it's the subtle things that you need to pick up, you know, and I can only imagine, you know, productivity is really linked to someone's willingness to work, or
and his emotional state, and his 100%, happiness, and those things. If you overwork people, they'll be unhappy. If you don't pay attention to them, they will not feel important. So that's why I say again, reach out to those people, build a relationship. You are in this together, so and pay attention and listen.
That's the big thing.
Listen
like
to
even
people.
Sarcastic, like little chirps or something. It always hits your ear differently.
Be aware. Be aware of what's going on. Like you said, that's a very good way of looking at the timesheet if someone is underworking, overworking. But I also keep an eye on, you know, teams. You can see people being available or being away, and that.
Oh, so
I
you're
mean-
monitoring them now.
You
okay.
very quickly pick up when someone is not available.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
especially in your working environment remotely. We foster communication. We basically communicate all with each other all the time.
Gotcha.
If you're gone for half an hour, you're gone. We know you're gone.
Yeah.
So
And you're right. It kind of, like any and all other communication, you'll have conversations with everyone in that day. But if you hit someone and they don't come back, you know exactly, like, ooh, something's wrong there or something happened. And then also, interesting fact is I have this rule when I was managing a bunch of developers, is especially through COVID, I had a rule that you should be as prepared to come to work on a whim. So if I phone you, you need to be able to come to work immediately, literally picking up your keys and coming to work. So with that said, you need to shower, you need to brush your teeth, you need to get dressed, because if you're not comfortable and if you don't feel like, hey, you're working, and a very good observation that you made now is have a dedicated workspace for yourself, even at home. So my rule is, if I phone you, you should be ready. So I'm expected the guys to shower and have clean hair. And
it's establishing a routine.
yeah,
You know, mimic
Routine
your
is
home
so
office
good.
like a real office. So
Yeah.
you still get up, you still shower, you go to your space, you go sit in front of the computer, you communicate and you work. Yes, you're at home, but you're at the office.
yeah.
You know, so mimic those things and set that routine. You know, take brunch and lunch at the same time. Do those things. So
You know what's the weirdest thing? We're a software company, and out of all the questions, it's nothing technical so far. It's all about people, which is the most important thing.
the most important
Right?
thing.
So when you and your team can't see each other, it may create a lack of trust. With this said, many managers and even clients become tempted to micromanage as a way to ensure teams are delivering, right? So my question is, how do you manage frustration because of this? Because I'm pretty sure micromanagement still happens, although it's an agile environment. And how do you establish trust between team members? And more importantly, how do you establish trust with a client?
Yeah, I want to go again back to communication. Be honest and being direct, not only with your team members, but also with the client. You know, you always need to have that transparency. Whether it's a blocker, a good thing or a bad thing, everybody needs to have that information, you know, of what's going on. So the communication. Set clear expectations. I mean, a lot of frustration gets cancelled out if I make you understand exactly what it is that you need from me, because it makes your job easier as well, you know, with the client. Page my book here.
One of the most prepared guests I had on the podcast.
Yeah, so and also then for trust is like follow through on commitments. If you tell a client or an employee that you are going to do something,
that's very important.
you need to do it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, why will I trust you? I asked you to help me with something, you made a promise, and now you don't do it. So,
it's like it's like a contract that you sign with a client.
Exactly.
Let's say something small that, and again with the conference that I realized is estimations are a real issue for developers. But regardless of that, if you say you're going to do something within an amount of time, you need to commit to it, because it's like a contract that you
trust,
sign,
yes.
right? Yeah, it's that trust that you build, and like you said, if you can't get to it, then you tell the client nice and early, going, I messed up, it's going to take way longer, or hey, I think we're going to get this done beforehand.
Yes.
Even that communication for, hey, I'll get it done sooner, is just as important as, hey, it's going to be delayed.
I think the next point is like to also listen very actively. There's nothing that quickly can break a line of trust when a client is busy communicating with you, and your attention is actually somewhere else, or on a Teams message that came in, or you're reading a mail here on the side. So it's very important
Oh,
to
so
listen,
actually be engaged.
active. So being engaged when
Yeah.
someone is talking to you, whether it's a client or one of your people, because they're busy telling you things. So if we go back to that relationship thing, how do you know if something is wrong? If you don't listen actively, you're not going to pick these things up.
Gotcha.
All right? Very importantly, you need to be reliable. All right? If you made the promise, if you said you're going to fix something, you need to make sure that you deliver something.
Yeah.
So you're reliable, because we want to move away from micromanagement.
Hmm.
For me to be able to do that, I should be able to rely on you. Give you a task, you tell me yes, it will be tomorrow, and I know it will be there tomorrow. You
Gotcha.
know, that's the trust thing. And then it all goes about relationships.
Hmm.
You build a relationship with your client. That's why we go and visit there. They come and visit you. It's not a friendship or a personal thing, but it builds the trust.
Yeah.
I get to know you. You get to know me. Client or employee.
Yeah. So, especially with being open and honest and all of that, what's your tip for when do you communicate bad news and when do you communicate good news to a client? When is it the best time to do it?
After you paid the bill.
Wow, that's that's an amazing answer.
The sooner you can relay communication,
Gotcha.
the sooner that you can take action.
Okay.
So if you foster a clear communication channel, giving good news or bad news should be the same thing.
Gotcha.
All right, because we are constantly steering this ship into a direction. And if we move into the wrong direction, the longer we hold on to that, the further we will go down the road. So if something goes wrong, bring it up straight away. Bring it up to the team. Bring it up to the client. You know, don't have this fear of knowing that you're going to put this on the table. The pawpaw's going to hit the fan. There's no stop. Whether you're going to tell him now or tomorrow, it's going to be the same situation.
Yeah.
But the sooner you can steer the ship into the right direction.
I love that.
That's
That's probably one of the best quotes I've heard this year is we are steering it. That's amazing, dude. Wow. So on that one, if a company makes a switch to deliver projects using a global team, they initially struggle with planning and tracking the team's progress. The product owner can't go around to the desks or to individuals going, hey, what's the status? Are we getting it done? And all of that kind of daily updates, right? So my question to you is, and I think, speaking just from a project management perspective, the value and the delivery is definitely there, right? So my question is, what is involved in making sure that the planning, the process, and the completion of projects are managed? And how do you do it on a global scale?
I think one of the first thing is establish goals.
Okay.
So set down exactly what it is, what we are here for, and what it is that we need to accomplish at the end.
How do you guys do it currently? That's PR planning, right?
Well, our project is quite big. We exist about 6 teams working on different components of this project. We're about 240 developers in total for the team. So we have quarterly plannings. We use the SAFE manual.
Yep.
And we have a whole week where all of us sit together, we plan these things out, we set our objectives, we know what our goals is, and then from there we start breaking it down into like smaller components, start breaking it into the different teams, define the dependencies on each other, define the risks, and then when we have our set of work, then from there we can break it up into that, and we start planning and our estimations and all the work that goes.
Look,
into that.
in theory, it sounds amazing.
It's a big process.
But I'm sure there's hiccups, right? It's like no process or planning is bulletproof.
Yeah, it's very easy to manage and plan something when it's internal and only us.
Yeah.
It becomes a bit more tricky when you have different products that need to work together.
Yeah.
Because now you have the integration as well. And each team is not only a specific team. Each one of these teams is actually diverse. So each team consists of members from different countries. So you need to use tool sets like SAFE and put processes and stuff in place.
And also set the expectations.
The tools, the expectations, all those things. Project management software, the Jira, whatever tool you use.
Yep.
It's very, very, very important.
Cool. So just I don't know, probably a personal question from my side, but how do you guys celebrate completing a project or a certain set of work? Do you guys do that? As a global team, do you guys get together on a Teams call and go, pop the bubbly and hey, we're live? Or how do you guys acknowledge all the work that everyone is doing?
I think it's very important to always celebrate any achievement.
Yeah.
Because we are a very big, diverse team.
You just
it's very difficult for us to pull everybody together somewhere at the world. We have been invited a couple of times. I think the team has visited Netherlands and Germany in where we have some of these celebrations. But yes, we try to do team building events. We try and go and celebrate. We go out. We work here at Agile Bridge, where we're very lucky to actually receive a budget to specifically spend on those reasons. Go have whatever event it is that you want to do, but you need to celebrate. You need to thank the guys and make them feel that they have accomplished something, because they have. We work very
100%.
hard, very long hours to, at the end of the day, put something down.
I've seen you guys' timesheets. I know you're putting in hours. Okay, that's awesome. So just to round off the podcast, right? So a couple of interesting questions that I formulated is, in your opinion, right? What is the or in your opinion, and considering that we have been exposed to international development skills and developers, right? Where would you rank South African developers? And it shouldn't be just limited to your team, but how good do you think South African developers are? And do you think it's a contributing factor of, us not, I don't know, it just feels like, in my opinion, it feels like a South African developer or a developer in our space are a lot more diverse and they are ready for more, when you, like an American team, is very focused. One person is one thing and one thing alone. But look, I don't want to steer your answer here, but how high up or low down in the scale do you think South African developer skills are?
So I think to answer that question, I need to compare our developers here probably to developers that I have encountered in other spaces. And in this space, I would like to actually compare our top developers, because you can have bad developers all over. So, but if you take a best developer here, is that a lot of the work, all over the work and projects, gets outsourced to very specific countries. I think South Africa and India are two of those countries. When you go look at the developers on these things, they're very much like you said, they're very specific orientated. They normally do like one specific task and those things. If you look at your developers that you get from South Africa, you will find that they are quite diverse in a couple of things they can do. You'll find the same guy can do DevOps, that can do back end, front end, full stack. You can do the whole kit.
It's almost expected of our developers to do this, right?
And so from my point of view, I would say that our best is definitely some of the best in the world. And I can second that with, if you look at some of the driving forces that's out there, the Netherlands is a very big country that is busy recruiting to become the IT capital of country in the world. And they've now in the last couple of months recruited thousands of South Africans that we've lost into that market because they've got a very nice big pool. And their preferred developer comes from here.
And do you think it's because of the diversity?
It's because of the diversity and the skill.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that actually leads me into my second little question that I formulated for myself is, at the moment, and according to Business Tech magazine, the IT sector in South Africa is struggling to recruit software developers, technical and business architects, database design developers and administrators even in this year, in 2023. So do you think the rise in global teams kind of being the norm, do you think that's a contributing factor to, South Africa actually struggling to find developers in South Africa?
Yes, I think any recruiter wherever in the world now got access to a much bigger pool
Right.
of developers to select.
Yeah.
For example, a guy that sits in the Netherlands does not just recruit people from the Netherlands.
Mm-mm.
He's got access to people all over the world.
Yeah.
Now, we've got the same thing. We can also recruit from people all over the world.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of a problem because of political stance and financials.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's too expensive for me to go and access a resource out of the Netherlands.
Yeah. But it's
The other way around, it's very good for them to resource them in. So their pool is big and their pool is cheaper. So
Yeah.
for us, the pool is also bigger,
Yeah.
but it's much more expensive. So now what happens is you only have a limited amount of resources available in South Africa, but you've got recruiters all over the world that's tapping into this pool. And especially the youngsters, the youngsters actually, it's a great opportunity to
Yeah.
take a job in the Netherlands because they do your transfer and all those things. So yes, it's become very, very difficult not only to find the people,
we keep them
but
as well.
you
yeah?
also need to keep them because there's a constant competition and recruitment
Yeah.
from overseas that's pulling the developers out of our local pool.
Any suggestions on how can we keep developers? How do you think? Like we went through all the items, trust, communication, openness, all of that thing. Do you think that would be a good incentive for our guys to stay, rather than be like a number in the Netherlands? What do you think is the best way to keep developers on the teams, for South Africa in general?
I think any person, whether it's been IT or engineering, whatever it is that you are busy in, people make moves when they're unhappy.
Okay.
They make a change when they feel that they need something else or they need something more. If you can give people, they come here for a salary, but you can give them quality of life, you support the life balance thing, and you keep them happy, then they will stay. If you're going to overwork people or put them into corners and that, they're going to run away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if it's IT or whatever. I think we need to foster, like we do here, it's like a very much family culture. We've got a very close culture. We listen to each other. We support each other.
Yeah.
And we try and help each other. So
Very important.
we try to keep everybody happy. And I think you cannot make a decision for a guy at the end of the day. But if you do your best to keep him comfortable and happy, you're minimizing your chances for that guy running away.
Gotcha.
You piss him off, he's gone.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Gentle
that's
creatures,
like
these developers.
gentle
eh?
creatures.
Yeah. Jakes, again, thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure to have you here tonight. So thank you again. Thanks for coming along.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Awesome.
Yeah, cheers.
Thank you to our sponsor, Agile Bridge. The unique blend of experience, accreditation, and in-depth business knowledge drive the crafting of integrated and empowering software solutions to medium and large corporate clients. Find out more by visiting agilebridge.co.za or send an email to info@agilebridge.co.za.